So I'm going to talk about garden lighting and the design of that this morning. So if you go to the next slide, I want to go straight into it. I'm going to have a tight schedule here. Think of about a home here. This is the actual extent of the home here, this white bit, all right? And then you've got driveways, you've got garden beds, you've got border lines, and you've got all this. And this is the front of the house. This is the front over here. So you're looking at a house that's 15 meters wide with a gate in the middle. All right, next slide. So and this is a slopey block as well, all right? So there's all sorts of challenges when you're going to do conduits and cabling and all sorts of things. Next. So the house wiring is complete. The customer's living in the house. But like typical customers or people on a tight budget, they're concerned about the house and they really have to wait before they do everything else. Now, the problem with that is that they often don't leave wires and conduits in the right places so that they know where they can switch the cables and how they can run the lights. So nothing generally in this particular case study was planned for the outside lighting, so nothing's pre-wired. The retaining walls and concrete pathways are not completed yet, but already started. The client has no idea of what his requirements are, except he wants to light the garden. Right, next slide. So when you look at the consultative process, I've got to first say, what are the immediate action items, because they're going to put the walls up next week, right? And if they put the walls up, I'm not going to be able to run conduits everywhere. So I need to do that, and I need the customer to say which areas they want lit. That was a big block of land. Now, I need to say, how are you going to switch these lights? Because you don't have, you haven't wired something inside the house. So if you're expecting to switch something on at the front door, how are you going to do it? All right? So you've got to set expectations by providing light samples so that when they go around, I give them some samples. They put them in at night and have a look at how much light a 5-watt light gives, for example. So they can then set their expectation about the luminosity that they end up with around the garden. And we nominate the light level. So do we have 10 in a row or do we have 5 in a row? Right, so that we know they're going to end up with the right light levels. And then we design the lighting based on the nominated light levels, select and procure the desired lights, connect the lights and set up the switching arrangements. Next slide, please. All right, so look at these legends. These are immediate areas nominated to be lit. So they want to start with the front of the house, basically. But they do want to have a future option to do whatever they want to do at the back. They've got these narrow passageways on each side of the house, but they're not concreted yet. We'll go to the next. So some of these have got garden beds and some are just a wood retaining wall. All right, next. So then we have a discussion about lights. Now these sorts of lights would go onto that wood retaining wall. There'll be a downlight illuminating that corridor. And in the garden beds, you typically pick something like this, a spotlight that sticks into the ground, and they're typically low voltage. Sometimes they'll want something more fancy. They might want to light the front of the house, from a floodlight and things like that. So there's many choices, and you can put sensors in and things like that as well. Right, next. So the surface mounted wall lights that I mentioned there would go along this side because that's got the timber. And down here we've got a garden bed, so we're going to put the spike lights. So I'm concentrating here on the bit that they want to do immediately. All right? So there's spotlights along the stepways. The steps are already built, so there's no chance of putting conduits in and putting like step lights in there because they hadn't planned it. Next slide, please. So now we're going to that design and how do we switch things. So I talked last week about smart switches and making these smart technologies do things for you. So that means we can use an app on a phone, but that's not always suitable for everybody. Your 5-year-old child is not going to start messing around with the app, right? So you want some sort of interface for everybody in the house. If you lose your phone dies, you still want to turn the lights on after all. So you can manually turn the lights on as well as have this smart thing. And these little relays would go outside of the house and they would connect wirelessly to each other, and you can set the switch, this switch here or the app, so that if you want to light the side lights only or the front lights only, each one of these switches can communicate through the app and you can turn the lights on as you desire. You can flexibly configure those lights. Next, please. Oh, sorry, go back, sorry. Yeah, so smart switching allows wiring autonomy. So it's a really nice product. Without having the smart home, you can have deploy switches, smart switches, so that they can do very specific functions where you can't get wire. Delegated access, so I could set this up so that my children and my wife also have access to that app. We can use manual operation, as I've mentioned. We can actually schedule, so we can say, well, at 7 o'clock at night, turn the lights on for 2 hours, right? You know, when I'm not home, for example. So you can schedule, you can start doing smart things, and you can say, well, when the clouds come and it rains, I want to turn these lights on and illuminate the porchway, for example. So you would have a light sensor, and that would give you the opportunity to automatically turn the lights on when the light levels become low. Right? Remote access, of course, and then there's lots of linkages with a lot of other smart devices. Fire alarms, smoke detectors. I've mentioned light detectors, could be noise detectors. There's so many smart things out there now. You can actually, it's a limit of your imagination as to what you can do around the home. Right, next. And just hit the next button again, would you? All right, and the next button again. Oh, sorry, back. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. I've just thrown in a little picture. This is one of my daughters and my grandchildren, of course. We all like to speak about our fabulous family, so I'm no different to anybody. But the house here, as you can see, with selected lights, and these could be most likely spike lights, right? You can actually illuminate the home and make it really nicely washed. It's not that you can read a book, but you create an ambience around the home, all right? So this is where the smart technologies, if you haven't got the wiring in there, can actually control this environment. And if you've got a sensor on the wall, you can actually have somebody walk up the driveway and it'll come up by itself. All right, next. All right. This one here, a driveway, and this is more to do with illumination, but also to highlight the foliage in the trees. Right? Now you can do this in red, yellow, green, if you really want to go to that expense, because you can have RGB smart lights these days, although most people are looking for something simple and affordable. Next, please. Another example, you've seen this many times, I'm sure, with column lights. That might be a garage, but it might also be the front gate, for example. Right? And most of these are all low voltage, so the wiring that we put in is not needing a big trench to be dug out. You can actually just bury it under the foliage around the garden, right? Next, please. Next. Right, oh, sorry. Right. So this is an end result, and it's using both spike lights, these lights, and special lights at the front there, the down lights, just to, yeah, that's right, yeah. That was the same slide, yeah, go on, next slide. And yeah, we're just looking around the home. This is an example of a home that I did about a year ago. And I'm doing one right now, actually, a more extensive one. Next, please. So you can see this is during the build. They haven't put the grass down. Next. And another little baby. Lovely grandchildren. Next. Right. So my customer, that particular customer said, look, it looks great, John, and really good work. And that's what I'd like to deliver to you guys. I am John Dale from GlobileNet, your favorite local electrician. Thank you.